Hello, everybody. I just want to read you this amazing story that I found in my great grandmother's diary here. It's called I Arrived. I was born in the year 1909. During her life, my grandmother, Sophia, had learned many useful skills. While rearing a family of 9, she had had lots of experiences in nursing them through the various childhood diseases and was often called to help when there was anyone sick in the community. Another area in which she could render assistance was that of a midwife, and she was considered an excellent person to have on hand in the care of the new mother and child. Coincidentally, my mother left Rusket to be in her own home at the time of my birth. It was April, the unpredictable month of showers and sunshine, the month of nature's awakening from her long winter sleep. The robins return. On the night of the 19th, the rain poured from the sky and beat in sheets against the window of the spare bedroom of my grandfather's house. Dr. A. Allen of Cardigan assisted my grandmother and Miss Alex MacDonald, and a lifelong friend of my mother's, ushered me into the world. While the good doctor was applying measures to save my mother's life, my grandmother noted with alarm that the baby was not breathing. She went to work immediately to get air into my lungs, and if it was not for her quick action, I would not be writing this story tonight. In those days, a baby's first bed was usually a clothes basket made from maple wood. The wood was peeled in long strips from a stick of maple and woven into baskets with nimble fingers of the Indian people, of whom there were many residing on the island at that time. The clothes basket was rectangular in shape and made an excellent bed for the baby. Besides clothes baskets, the Indians made potato baskets, sewing baskets, and many little decorative ones with covers. Sometimes there would be dry wood to make a colored pattern. Besides being useful, these beautiful baskets were works of art. When a mother was expecting, when a baby was expected, the grandmother would spend much time getting its bed ready by lining the basket with pretty materials and decorating the edge with ribbons and bows. My father had spoken to an Indian lady for a basket for me, but as I arrived ahead of schedule, it had not been finished. After rescuing the tiny atom of humanity from untimely end, I weighed less than 3 pounds. My grandmother's next problem was where to put me. In the excitement that followed my arrival, while looking for something to use as a bed, she picked up a box which had contained a pair of new boots my grandfather had just bought. Finding nothing more suitable in sight, she wrapped me in a woolen shawl and put me in the shoebox. That night was cold and stormy, and the only source of heat in the house was the kitchen stove. So she set a box on the oven door, under the watchful eyes of Mrs. MacDonald, who stayed for a week with the family. It was a rule on that day that new mothers in bed for the mothers were to remain in bed for at least 10 days. So when Mrs. MacDonald left, my grandmother was alone to care for my mother and me. Even after my mother was up and about, she was very weak and unable to do much, and besides being the second youngest member of her family, she knew nothing about child care, and was afraid she would not be able to care for such a small, delicate baby. Her parents therefore insisted that she remain in the old home for some time, and it was well into summer when she and I had returned to Rusket. When I outgrew the shoebox, my next bed was a pillow placed in Grandma's rocking chair, and there I remained, except while she was rocking me, which was usually most of the night, for I slept all day, and howled from sunset to sunrise. My grandmother was at this time 65 years of age, and she was crippled with arthritis, yet she sat up night after night keeping the fire going on the stove and tenderly caring for the wee, howling morsel of humanity that was me. If I had been born in this generation, I would have been in a hospital incubator, surrounded by professional people, and receiving the best of medical care. But Grandma pulled me through it in an old farmhouse with nothing to keep me warm except the kitchen stove and her love. Many years later, I met a European lady who came from a very wealthy family. In her youth, she had a lovely home, ponies to ride, beautiful clothes, and an excellent education, and she talked. I could not help concentrating on her position in life with that of my own, and I said, I'd sure like to live that way. You must have been very happy. And I was surprised when she answered, No, I'd be happy if I could only stay young. But I dread old age and hope I never see it. I'd rather than stick around in people's way, I hope I'll take a heart attack when I'm about 50 and go quickly and cleanly, with no nuisance to either myself or others. Well, I'd like to live longer than that, but of course no one has control over that, or how we shall go. And it really doesn't matter as long as we are ready and at peace with God. She looked at me as if she thought I was joking. Then, seeing I was in earnest, she said, Surely a woman of your intelligence isn't such a fool as to believe all that gibberish. Took me a minute or two to get over the shock of that sentence. And then, before I knew it, I was pouring out the story of my youth and how my grandmother had saved my life, cared for me in my first home in Lauren Valley, of my mother's care and how hard she worked to keep us clothed and clean, and of how my father spent hours cutting down the giant trees to make enough to feed us, and all the love and care with which I had been surrounded with all my life, from my birth on. Yes, I said, I believe in God, for the Bible says that God is love. Love met me when I came into this world, and love will be with me when I leave it, and be on the other side to meet me there. She did not reply, but then I noticed there was tears in her eyes when I had finished. I know what I told this woman was true.